Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Matters That Matter. This is the fourth installment of our conversation series from Hendricks Chapel, which we began a few months ago. And this evening, we are absolutely delighted to have with us Vice President for Community Engagement, B. González. B, thank you so much for jumping in with us tonight.
Thank you, Brian. It's a little scary, but we'll see what happens.
We're in this together. We're in this together. So I've been humbled this week. I've been reading these wonderful articles about B. González, who is coming to the end of her career at Syracuse University after 36 years. And as you celebrate 36 years, I am actually celebrating my 36th month. So it's, and we, yeah, thank you. And B, we've been thinking about this is we remember when I moved to Syracuse just over 36 months ago, one of the very first things that I got to experience was a tour of the city from Vice President B. González. And I remember to this day, Kristen and I riding around the city, and it was clear that we were receiving that tour from someone who loved Syracuse. And what I love to tell people is the Konkol family fell in love with Syracuse because we were introduced to Syracuse by someone who clearly had loved Syracuse for a long time. And now that we've been working together for a while, I'm wondering, when you were driving me around that day, what did you want me to know about Syracuse and what did you want me to see?
I wanted you to know that Syracuse had an amazing history, that in spite of the statistics that surround our community, that there's a lot of beauty here and there's a lot of talent, and we need more talent, right? Because my goal has been for many, many years to really bring to the surface the potential and really shine this community, right? And help this community shine. I mean, you know, there's so much here, so much talent, so much history. I love the place. You're right.
When I think about, you represent, B, in many ways the spirit and the soul of this community. And I know that many people that are viewing tonight on Facebook are celebrating alongside you. And I want to share to our Facebook viewers as a reminder, if you have some questions for us, or if you have some comments, if you want to wish B well and thank her, or if you have a story that is shareable for public consumption, please feel free to write it in your comments, and those questions will get to us. And so we want to make sure that this is interactive. B, you moved to Syracuse at the age of 3. And for those first few years of your childhood, you moved back and forth from Puerto Rico to Syracuse to Puerto Rico to Syracuse. I'm curious about how that impacted your childhood in a way that helped you to be who you are today.
So, yes, I came, I think if I count them, maybe 11 transitions, right, in elementary school, 3 in 2nd grade and 3 in 5th grade. So there's 6 of them are in just 2 years. And I think it's what's helped me become adaptable and flexible, right? Really did help. Couple of things. So I did the Strength Finders thing, right? And so my top 4 strengths are a ranger. I'm the oldest of 6, and I had to take care of a bunch of people early on. Positive connectedness, right? I like to make sure that I believe everything happens for a purpose and it's all connected, right? So that's my number 2 strength finder. My number 3 is positivity, right? And everybody says I smile too much, but that is a part of how I approach life, right? In a positive perspective. And the 4th is strategic, which is why I got to become Vice President for Community Engagement. But I think that back and forth, right? And the needing to adapt to different. I mean, in Syracuse, we had house, apartments, bathrooms, running water. In Puerto Rico, not necessarily, right? And so making those adjustments back and forth really set me up, I think, for a career in higher ed, for a career in a field where ambiguity is really important, to have a command of ambiguity, and it just all worked for me. It all served me well.
In addition to being someone, known as being adaptable, I think, you've described yourself as a disruptor, someone who adjusts the status quo, if you will. And then there's a number of different examples of that. But I think about your senior year of high school and running for class president. And I'd love to hear more about that and what drew you to that and what inspired you to that. What was going through your mind? Because we can see that as part of your story about what has led you to this point.
So, I think back 1971, right? I mean, if you think back about 1971 and where we are today, there are a lot of similarities. And it was about challenging. It was about challenging the status quo. It was about gaining voice, right? Gaining access and gaining opportunity. And there was a group of us that decided that we would try to really change the dynamic and the power structure of our high school. And we were successful. I will tell you, there were a lot of surprised people when I won that race. And some of it, unfortunately, is because you get underestimated, right? Mm-hmm. I'm small, I'm kind of funny, I'm a little bit of, I confuse easily, it appears to people, right? And so they just underestimate me, and to their detriment. And that's happened to me multiple times in my life. I think every election I won because my opponent underestimated me.
Mm-hmm. And so, you have this amazing experience growing up, as you've said, and going into leadership as a senior in high school, and then off to SUNY Binghamton, where as you have shared with me and have given me permission to share with our viewing audience that it wasn't exactly a stellar first year at SUNY Binghamton.
No, it wasn't. And partly it was just the adjustment, right? First generation student adjusting to an environment that was just different, adjusting to the freedom to make my own choices and decisions, because I grew up in a pretty structured household. So yeah, I promptly earned 7 Fs and 1 A freshman year. And guess what that A was in, Brian?
I don't want to guess. It
was in Spanish, right? because all I had to do was walk in and pass an oral test, and I was able to do that. But what the profound impact of that experience for me is that my academic advisor at SUNY Binghamton, I was an educational opportunity program student, and Mr. John Yodell, he'll always be an important person in my life. He said to me, you're suspended. And I said, I cannot go home, right? Because coming home would have been really an amazing failure, and really would have been an amazing failure. So John said, here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna work for me this summer, and you prove to me that you belong here, and we will readmit you in the fall semester. And then that's what happened. And that opportunity of second chances put me on my trajectory to higher education and student affairs and student services. And I've been paying it forward ever since. And that is another tenet of my life, right? That need to pay it forward.
I love what you're sharing, B, about this sense of mentors, that how easy it can be to write people off. Here you're saying, coming into your first year with several Fs, and how easy it can be to write people off. But I love what you're sharing about your own experience, about what happens when we take some time to understand where people are coming from and to learn more about their story and to try to animate their gifts. And so it's not surprising that you had that experience yourself, and then transition after a few years at SUNY Binghamton to University College. And when we think about access and opportunity and removing barriers and learning about people's stories and recognizing that not everyone's story is a straight line, and right, there's a lot of curveballs that happen. What could you share a little bit more about that transition back to University College, and what attracted it to you at that point in your life to contribute?
So I knew that the students at University College, if you impacted the student, you were really impacting the entire family. And I knew that from experience, right? Because my parents were students at University College. They weren't working on a degree, but they were working on English language courses, and they were exposed to the university through that experience. And that was part of what created a pathway for me, right? And my siblings. So, University College, over and over again, the students that I worked with there and the students that I met there, they all validated that sense, right? That their opportunity to pursue their educational dreams really did change their trajectory and the trajectory of their family. And when people stop me, after 36 years, I've got 3 generations of students that I've worked with, right? Some from the same family. And I hear that story. I mean, they give that back to me, right? As a form of thank you, which is always extremely humbling.
I hesitate to ask you about memorable students and memorable colleagues. I mean, because there's so many, but I would imagine right now it's, in addition to thinking about mentors, that there's been reflection on those that you have served alongside and students. Are there any particular that you've been mindful of these last few weeks in preparing for this next transition in your life?
There are, and they're all students who I met in a very casual and unexceptional way, right? And maybe I'll quickly talk about 2. One is a student who went to high school with me, right? And she and I graduated the same year. She went off to one SUNY school, I went to another. And 8 or 9 years, I was at Binghamton 8 years. So let's say 9 years later, we meet at University College. And she was searching, right? She was searching for a way to get back to higher education. She was dealing with recovery issues, and she was a single parent, and she was just struggling to find her path. So we chatted, and I said, let's try this, let's get you started, right? And she had a lot of barriers. She had loan issues that she had to address before she could actually register. I mean, it took a little bit of work to get her actually to where she could enroll, but she earned her bachelor's, she earned her master's, and now she's a published author, right? And so, and that's a beautiful thing for me to know that. But the most amazing thing was that maybe 4 years ago, I received an email from her son thanking me for having been a part of his mother's life, because that changed the trajectory of his life, right? I can't even tell the story without tears coming to my eyes.
Oh, it's B, I think about when you've shared some of these stories with me and with others before, and it's a reminder that sometimes when we think about universities, we think about public universities and we think about private universities, but I think you're one of those people that makes this a personal university, that you really help it to be personal and to know people's names and to know people's stories and to meet them where they are,
Yes.
But not to let them stay where they are. And it's been really fascinating to listen to you over these last few weeks, reflect upon your career and the progression at University College itself. And so from your entry into UC and to rising to the level of dean. And I'm curious about different leadership roles have with them different perspectives of an organization. Sometimes we see the trees, sometimes we see the forest, if you will, as they say. And how, with your changing perspective at UC as you progress into different leadership roles, what changed and what stayed the same?
What stayed the same is the easy end. What stayed the same was really the focus on the student, right? And the student experience. And so if you're really focused on the student experience, then you're focused on all the other pieces as well, right? The processes, the instruction, the quality of the faculty, the quality of the facilities, et cetera. And so the student was always at the core, right? So what I used to say UC to staff all the time was, our job is to screen people in here. We're not here to screen people out, right? And that then you are playing to people's strengths. and looking for ways to bring them into the community. So what's the difference? I think I just expanded my circle, right? And of influence, because I mean, you got to think about this. The students that you see were staff, right? So I had students that were part of the staff. The students that you see were traditional age students, and they were seniors. So I had this rainbow, like this real rainbow of students that I could work with, and we tried to reflect. We worked really hard at UC to reflect that back, but we were also looking for ways to be innovative, right, in the work that we did. We did some amazing things. I mean, when Carrier closed, we were instrumental in pulling together a community-wide job fair to address the issues of the Carrier folks, right? When we had the Labor Day storm that just devastated, no, I'm referring when Hurricane Katrina, the chancellor called me into the office and said, could you please, my parents came to the United States in 1952 to North Carolina, to the Jim Crow South from Puerto Rico. Hillbillies, we're jibaros, right? They were from the mountains of Puerto Rico. My father went from cutting sugarcane to harvesting watermelon in North Carolina. They had no idea what the Jim Crow South was about. They, as a married couple, were a biracial couple in North Carolina in 1952. That had a profound impact on my family. And so I've had to learn, which is why I embrace people for who they are, and I look for their strengths. It comes from that. But, you just never know, right? I have some great stories, right? So the rhyme of our lives, right? I went to a Segovia concert in 9th grade at what is now the soon to be technical high school, the arts high school, Central Tech. And it was an amazing concert, but there was a couple in front of us. And I was, an obnoxious teenager, of course, and just moving into 9th grade. And I was just like ragging on this couple, right? Like they were opposite. He had long hair, she had short hair. And I was just so obnoxious to the point where they got up and shifted their seats, right? I walked into my 9th grade class, my 9th grade English class, and guess who my teacher was? The woman that I had harassed so terribly, right? That lesson, that's one of those lessons, right? To pay attention, because you just never know. Yeah. You never know when someone's going to come back into your life. I've already shared 3 stories like that, I think.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so sad. This work, this work of equity and inclusion, this work that has to do with the institutional racism in this country. This is hard work. It requires persistence, and it's lifelong, right? It's just lifelong. We have our little spurts and starts and spurts at it. This time it feels different to me because I see so many more people in allyship, right, than ever before over this issue. I mean, I can't even watch it. Like, I am one of those people, I have not watched the full videotape of the 8 minutes and 46 seconds because I can't, right? But it has galvanized this country in a way that we've never been galvanized before. And I hope that we figure out how to sustain it.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering about, one of the things I've always admired about you, B, over these last 3 years together, is that we can take things incredibly seriously. I mean, serious issues, painful issues, important issues, and still, in some ways, defiantly still have joy and laughter in the midst of that. It's almost like joyfulness itself is an act of protest. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask if you could share a little bit more about that in terms of, because you bring such joy to your life and such joy to your work and laughter, while also engaging with incredibly serious, difficult, painful matters. Can you share more about how that works for you?
I think that has to do with my faith, Brian, right? My belief in humankind, right? I just believe in humankind, and it drives me, right? Finding that joy, right? Finding that joy, bringing that joy is one of the things that motivates me. That helps me stay energized and committed to the work that I do. Plus, I do take time to smell the coffee or check out the roses or watch the birds, right? I mean, I stop. I give myself that gift because it's really important. It really is important. But that positivity comes from my faith, and it's a core to who I am.
Is there anything, and there's a lot over 36 years, but are there things that, I don't want to say the word, maybe it's regret, maybe it's mistakes, maybe whatever word we want to come up with. But as you think about the past 36 years, are there moments and times or choices or actions that you think, I wish I would have done that differently, or perhaps that's not the way that you perceive things? But I'm just curious, as you look back in your own processing, what does that look like for you, B?
That happens a lot, right? I wish I'd handled that just a little bit differently. I think all those lessons really came to me around my learning how to be more inclusive, right? So I'll give you an example. Learning how to address someone from a different religion, right? So, it's not always proper to just put out your hand for a shake, right? And so I learned all those lessons the hard way by being embarrassed, but I took that embarrassment and I used it as an opportunity to learn. So, some things I did, like once I admitted a student to University College who was really brilliant, and then about 3 days later he got arrested for some gang activity, right? And I'm thinking, how did I miss that, right? But would I have missed it? I don't know, right? I don't really remember all the negative things. I'm not one that hangs on to the negative, right? I cling to the positive. So that's really hard for me. Other than I am very reflective, and I will come back to a person and say, I mishandled that. Could we try it again? Or just outright apologize, right?
We've talked about the past. We've spoken here a little bit about the present challenges here of the present, and how this feels, to use your words, it feels differently, right? And I'm wondering about, as we think about the next 36 years at Syracuse University, the next 36 years here in the city of Syracuse, central New York, this country, this world, hopes, dreams, aspirations, what are the things that you're hoping that the next group, the next generation, the next cohort, if you will, can carry forward? What are your hopes and dreams?
My hopes and dreams are that our inequities disappear, right? That we don't have to worry about having the highest poverty rate for Latino and African-American children and Black children in this community. That we don't have to worry, that we don't have to be concerned about our graduation rate, right? That all those inequities and all those disparities disappear in our community. And I am super excited because there's a level of leadership coming up in the next generation that makes me really excited, right? It makes me excited for them, and it makes me excited for me, because it says that I can spend more time doing some other things. Not that I'm not going to be engaged in the movement, because the movement is really important, but I want a granny nanny, right? I have grandchildren in Maryland. I want a granny nanny for a little bit. My husband's been waiting for me for a year to join him in his retirement so that we can travel the Erie Canal and see this country from the rivers and the lakes, right? So I want to write a book. I want to write a book about the history of the Latino community in Onondaga County. I got lots of things I got to do, Brian.
Well, and we all want to thank you. And I want to make sure that those who are joining us on Facebook, one of the things we'd love to do as we come near to the conclusion of our conversation, if you have some well wishes that you want to share in the comments, or if you have something to share, a story, anything it is, just to